Warning: the following case file contains classified stupidity, buried incompetence, and decisions so questionable that someone actually stamped them. Approved. Proceed at your own risk. Top secret and stupid, because even history's smartest missions had incredibly dumb moments. May 1945. Germany is collapsing faster than a cheap lawn chair at a family reunion. Hitler is dead. Berlin is dust. And the Third Reich is experiencing the world's most deserved meltdown. While Germany is falling apart like wet cardboard, one man is unusually calm: Wernher von Braun, the Nazi engineer behind the world's first long-range ballistic missile, the V-2. As Allied troops carve up Germany, von Braun doesn't run. He doesn't hide. He doesn't try to disappear in a crowd. No, he contacts the US Army like he's scheduling a dentist appointment. Hey America, it's me, the rocket guy. I'll be sitting right here when you arrive. No rush, because von Braun knows one thing. He built weapons so advanced that the US wants him more than it wants moral consistency. And sure enough, when American forces reach him, they treat him less like a captured Nazi officer and more like a celebrity guest they've been dying to meet. But von Braun wasn't the only one. Across Germany, as the war collapsed, scientists, engineers, doctors, and technical experts walked out of bunkers, dusted off their lab coats, and basically said, "So, you guys hiring?" Because while World War II was ending, the Cold War was already warming up, and the US was racing to grab as many German scientists as possible before the Soviets scooped them up like clearance items. Thus began one of the strangest, darkest, and most ethically confusing operations in American history: Operation Paperclip, a top-secret recruitment campaign where America essentially said, "Okay, listen, you might have worked for Hitler, you might have designed weapons, you might be listed under the definitely did war crimes category, but you're really good at rockets." And that was enough. Paperclip wasn't small. It wasn't a handful of scientists. It wasn't a polite exchange. It was a massive intelligence scramble that eventually brought over 1,500 German scientists to the United States between 1945 and 1962. And why was it called Paperclip? Because US intelligence literally clipped together the pages in their files that said Nazi, SS member, or possibly involved in human experimentation, and wrote, "Ignore this." That was the vetting system. If Tinder ran a Cold War recruitment program, it would have been more cautious. Meanwhile, the Soviets took a very different approach. They didn't offer visas. They didn't ask politely. They didn't offer benefits. They kicked in doors and said, "Congratulations, you live in Moscow now." Suddenly, every scientist in Germany faced the world's worst job decision: Team America, freedom plus rockets, versus Team Soviet Union, work or disappear. And the French? They kidnapped people. A van pulled up, door opened, scientist gone, boom! French science. Britain stole patents and dismantled factories like they were collecting Lego sets. It was the scientific Hunger Games, and at the center of it all, the US was offering something nobody else could: bring your family. We'll pretend none of this ever happened. And that was the moment Paperclip started to unravel. Once German scientists began arriving in the United States like they were on an all-inclusive Cold War vacation package, Americans noticed. They looked exactly like what they were: German, military-aged, suspiciously well-groomed, and allergic to talking about the years 1933 to 1945. The Army tried to keep Paperclip secret. They figured no one would question random Germans with heavy accents walking into high-security labs. But when these scientists started appearing in Texas, Alabama, Ohio, and California, people began asking, who are these guys? Why do they keep saying, "if did not do that," when nobody asked? Is that a Nazi engineer buying groceries in Huntsville? So in 1946, the military panicked and held a press conference. Imagine trying to explain this with a straight face. Yes, we brought in German scientists. Yes, some had SS connections. Yes, they built weapons we were trying to destroy last year. But rockets. The backlash was brutal. Albert Einstein condemned it. Eleanor Roosevelt condemned it. The NAACP condemned it. Veterans were furious. Millions of displaced refugees, including Holocaust survivors, had no path into America. Meanwhile, Nazi scientists were being chauffeured to bases like VIP guests. Families who lost loved ones read the headlines and said, wait, so that guy gets a house, a job, and a paycheck because he was good at building missiles for Hitler? It was a PR nightmare wearing an SS uniform. But inside the Pentagon, they didn't care. Not because they didn't see the moral problem, they did. They simply ranked the Soviet threat higher. By 1947, the Cold War escalated from awkward tension to what if we all die tomorrow? And suddenly, every German scientist who could calculate trajectories or blast radii became priceless. Wernher von Braun, the man whose rockets bombed London, became America's golden goose. So the army hid his Nazi past behind layers of friendly PR. In public, he became the charming rocket man with a toothpaste commercial smile. Behind the scenes, he had overseen a program where thousands of concentration camp prisoners built his rockets under brutal, deadly conditions. But the official story was, don't worry about it, look, space. And it worked. Von Braun became the face of American rocketry. By the late 1950s, he appeared on magazine covers, hosted TV specials, and was introduced as the man who will take us to the moon. And here's the wildest part. He did. After the Soviets launched Sputnik in 1957, terrifying America, von Braun's team delivered Explorer 1, the first U.S. satellite. Then came Saturn V, the rocket that carried Apollo astronauts to the moon. The same man who built Hitler's Phi-2 built America's moon rocket. History is complicated like that. But here's the twist. Most paperclip scientists were not von Braun. The majority were average. The US expected super geniuses. They got mid-tier researchers, lab assistants, and men who peaked in 1938. Many finished their contracts and went home. Others stayed but did work that American scientists could have done anyway. In the end, Paperclip looked less like a master plan and more like a frantic Cold War Black Friday sale. We bought a lot of stuff because we were scared the Soviets would buy it first. And buried inside were the real questions. Did national security justify hiring people tied to war crimes? Did defeating the Soviets excuse ignoring morality? Can science be separated from the people who create it? When von Braun died, one obituary described him with chilling accuracy. A kind of Faustian shadow may be discerned in the career of Wernher von Braun, a man so intellectually hungry that any accommodation may be justified. Operation Paperclip became one of the most bizarre open secrets in American history. A program where the U.S. didn't just forgive certain sins, it offered a welcome basket. Because to the Pentagon, the moral scoreboard didn't matter as much as the technological scoreboard. And if America didn't hire these men, the Soviets would. And the Soviets weren't handing out ethics quizzes. So America swallowed the discomfort and said, you built rockets for Hitler. Now, build better ones for us. That was the tone of the early Cold War. Nations competing for talent, technology, and who could reach orbit first. Look deeper, and the picture becomes even more tangled. Some scientists genuinely tried to start over. Others carried dark shadows that the government tried hard to hide. And for families who survived Nazi terror, Paperclip opened a wound that never fully healed. How do you explain that men tied to atrocities received housing, salaries, and respect, while millions of victims remained homeless or stateless? It is one of the most uncomfortable contradictions in American history. Yet without these scientists, the US space program would have been slower, the Cold War could have been riskier, and the moon landing might have been delayed by years, which raises the question no one likes asking: can a nation build its future on the knowledge of people with a dark past and still call itself moral? That is the paradox of Operation Paperclip, a morally tangled mission that helped win the space race, but forced America to confront the cost of scientific progress, because progress is not always clean. Sometimes it is built on secrecy, silence, and compromises no one wants to talk about, but everyone benefits from. Maybe that's why Paperclip remains in the gray zone. Part triumph, part tragedy, part we should never do that again. But history shows that nations don't always choose the moral path. They choose the path that wins. And Paperclip was a win wrapped in an ugly bow. So the next time someone says, "We went to the moon," remember, we did. But the blueprint was complicated. Moral of the story: sometimes the smartest missions are built on the dumbest decisions. And sometimes those dumb decisions end up changing the world. Top secret and stupid, because even history's smartest missions had incredibly dumb moments.